Morning, the men and women from LA City Fire arriving out here, South Los Angeles. This is going to be the 1100 block of West 85th Street. This is an apartment complex, and you can clearly see what the firefighters are up against right as they arrive. What they are saying is a one unit on the second floor, fully involved. As Skyfox is arriving, we're just getting in position out here. You can see a lot of this fire coming out of that window, but also a lot of smoke pouring out of every little opening out there on that second floor. That means there's a lot of smoke up there, and that's what the firefighters are worried about. They're going to make sure that all those folks that are living in that apartment building are evacuated and out of there safely. That smoke is probably just as dangerous as the fire. You can see one of those first firefighters making their way up on the roof out here. Again, this is an active structure fire. Apartment building, 1100 block of West 85th Street. No word on any injuries yet, but of course firefighters just arriving, dealing with a very dangerous situation and a lot of civilians inside that building. I'm Stu up in Skyfox. Back to you guys in the studio.
Stu, can you tell us a little bit more about the area itself? It looks like it is a heavily populated residential area. It looks like there are buildings surrounding this proximity-wise. What more do you see right now?
Well, right now I can tell you that the fire is on the second floor. This is an apartment building. They haven't been talking. I got one ear on what these firefighters are doing down there. I haven't heard them talk about any injuries as of yet. The big concern, though, is a lot of that smoke. You can see how that smoke just bellowing out of that whole top floor out there. And even though that one unit is obviously of concern to those firefighters, all that smoke getting into all those other units, that's going to be the issue for any of those civilians that are inside that building. They've got to make sure that all those civilians are out. You can see some windows being broken right there, and that's probably the firefighters making entry into that building. A lot of these firefighters actually pulling hose lines, getting their way into those stairwells. But in that shot right there, you can see how that smoke is just bellowing out of those vents and out of that one window. So those units fully charged with smoke right now. That is so dangerous for anybody that's in there. Clearly, the firefighters, they have all this breathing apparatus, and the civilians inside, hopefully everybody's gotten out as soon as that fire really started going and fire alarms went off. As far as the neighborhood itself, we can tell you right now that this is, like you said, very residential, very tightly packed. These are older homes, and that's also something of a concern for these firefighters. These are, they're up to code, but these codes are a lot different than what we have for modern homes. Also, the fire right now breaking through that roof up there, breaking through the roof, and so that's another issue for these firefighters. Right now, they're still what's called a defensive mode, meaning where they're actually going in and trying to battle these flames actively. They're not doing it from the outside. You can see these firefighters on the roof. Very dangerous work. Civilian lives is what everybody's concerned about. We see these guys up here on the rooftop. There are more firefighters inside that building helping if there is anybody that needs rescuing and also battling these flames.
Just in the few minutes we've been talking with you, the fire has really intensified. We're seeing the flare up, and you see those firefighters on the roof. Obviously they're trained for this. They know what they're doing, but it just seems like a very dangerous condition.
Roxy, you are so right, and this is one of the things that, a lot of, it's great that we got here so early so that a lot of folks can see how these fires grow, how quickly they move, and what the LA City firefighters have to deal with when they arrive here on scene. Now, this fire clearly started in one apartment, now is through the roof out here. We talked about it, older construction, so the way these buildings are built, not as helpful for the firefighters. There's less flame retardant in there, and you can really see how this thing is really starting to rip through that attic area. Again, one area is I'm always concerned about any kind of victims or injuries to civilians. We're listening. We haven't heard any. That's really great news, but you can really see how this fire really starting to take off out here. LA City firefighters, they're going to have their hands full. Again, this is going to be West 58th Street. It's basically, 85th Street. 85th Street and Vermont. We're down in the South Los Angeles area. As Vinny gets a little bit wider, when we first arrived, I did see some folks outside the building. Hopefully those are going to be the residents and possibly even neighbors. But Roxy, you did mention, look how close that one building to the right is. Now the fire itself is on the left, on the left-hand side you have another apartment building. On the right-hand side you have the fire. Right now though, most of those flames on the alley side, so adjoining structure structures, right now not an issue, but LA City Fire, you can see they've got their hands full trying to get these flames under control.
Well, Stu, we know that firefighters, their first priority is saving lives. The second priority, of course, is saving property as best they can and try to keep the fire contained and try to keep it from spreading. And we see that one building there to the right of the burning building, and you can see that there are emergency personnel walking around there, presumably trying to check things out as well. Do we know for a fact that everyone at this point has gotten out of that burning apartment building?
Tony, we don't know that for a fact, and that's like one of the things that clearly, you know, I personally, when we do these reports, I'm always very concerned about, especially with a fire this size in an apartment building. And when we saw that heavy bulk of smoke just kind of just bellowing through all those windows on that second floor, everybody, we hear that so often. The smoke is a killer, and in this case, that thick smoke is, of course, LA City firefighters. You know, I'm just a guy in a helicopter reporting on stuff, but you can see how this fire really just getting into that attic way and just tearing its way through there. But, you know, like I said, you know, I'm not a professional. Those guys from LA City Fire, when they arrived, they knew what they were dealing with right away. They've got that breathing apparatus. They made their way into this building, and I'm sure, like you said, life is their biggest concern. They probably were going through, knocking on doors, maybe even breaking indoors to make sure that all the residents on that second floor are out of that building. Of course, that unit that was on fire, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Hopefully everybody was out of there, or there was nobody in that apartment. But right now, LA City firefighters, the men and women, these guys, professionals, they're working very hard to get those flames under control. And even though we saw that one break through the roof there just moments ago, a ball of fire, now we're starting to see a little bit of the control start happening. These guys are out here, they're professionals, they're on top of the building, they're in the building, and they're putting a lot of water on it right now. Hopefully they'll get this thing under control.
You know, we do see the water now, because it felt like it was taking a while for them to get going with that water. So maybe it's a tactic. They got on the roof, it seemed like right away, and then did they puncture holes in the roof, and that's what they're doing now? They're putting the water through the roof? Is that what's going on?
Oh, look at that. The fire just kind of popping through in different spots. Roxia, LA City firefighters, these guys literally are some of the best in the world, and we are so blessed to have them here in the Los Angeles area. And these are the firefighters that protect anybody in LA City, in the LA City area. When they arrive out here, of course, assessment, making a plan, these guys are trained for any situation, and every situation is different. And so when they arrive out here, they're not just running and grabbing hoses, and everybody has a job. They have to assess the situation, and then they make they make an attack on that fire. How are they going to put this out the most efficient way? So these guys, they are guys and gals are very, very efficient. They get out here, they set up as quickly as possible, and they get that water on those fire as quickly as possible. But also, it's like Tony and everybody else too, we're all concerned. Hopefully everybody got out. I'm sure that's one of the first things those firefighters were doing when they arrived out here. Gear up, get those masks on, get that breather on, and get up onto that floor where that fire is. Knock on doors, make sure everybody's out and all the civilians are safe. Right now, though, this fire, look at the difference just in a couple of minutes. You know, and you're right, Araxia, they do actually cut holes in the roof, basically to vent those hot gases so that they can get at that fire.
Well, yeah, and obviously, and Stu, I think you may have already alluded to this, that obviously they made the determination that it was safe for those firefighters, or as safe as it could possibly be, because you never really know, for those firefighters to get up on that roof. But these are professionals. They do know how to use sounding techniques to measure the integrity of the roof before they actually go up there. But, you know, we've seen instances where things go wrong, even with all the knowledge that they have and the professionalism that they exhibit.
Firefighting is essentially a very dangerous business, and these guys, like you said, trained to the max, and they know all these tactics. But things can change in a heartbeat, and most of the time, you got to say it, it's like most of the time, almost all of the time, firefighters go home at the end of the day, civilians are rescued, and some property is damaged. But these guys, like we've been talking about, they got out here, they assessed the situation, they clearly have have some sort of common attic, because we saw the flames start on the right side of the screen. Now we have fire on the left side of the screen. So that fire in the attic way, so they're basically chasing that fire. That's actually a term that I've heard firefighters use, where they're chasing it through the attic, trying to get to where it is to put that water on it. Right now, though, they've got a couple of holes in that rooftop. A lot less orange glow, which is awesome. That shows that these firefighters making headway down there. Again, though, still listening, making sure officially no injuries, but right now, though, now the fire's kicking back up again. I was going to say what a change it's been since we've been here, but now it looks like the fire's starting to make its way onto the left side of the building. So these guys, they've got a real firefight on their hands this morning.
Yeah, it's really spreading. Okay, Stu, we are going to take a short break. Obviously, you're going to stay there, and we'll check back in with you. We'll be right back.